Oil and gas giant Chevron leaving the Golden State amidst a sometimes contentious relationship with California.
The company is moving its headquarters to Texas following the footsteps of Elon Musk. KCAL News reporter Gio Insignaris here now with that decision and what led up to it and the impact it may have.
A leaked text between California state leadership and Chevron's CEO abruptly ended a 145-year relationship almost overnight. At the time, drivers were already dealing with gasoline prices around $6.43 per gallon, and thousands of energy jobs were suddenly caught in the middle while officials publicly downplayed the company's exit. Now, in early 2026, the fallout from that moment is still shaping California's energy debate. But how did a private disagreement spiral into a statewide energy scare? The story first surfaced on February 11, 2025, when the Wall Street Journal revealed a series of private messages that had quietly circulated among political insiders for months. The first message came from Chevron CEO Mike Wirth in July 2024. After days of trying to reach top officials in California, Wirth sent a direct text. "We are about to make an announcement I would like to tell you before you read about it."
That's right, Juan. Susie, good evening to you guys. It's a big deal, major milestone for this company and for the state. Chevron's been centered in California for more than a century. Its corporate offices have been in the Bay Area in San Ramon since 2002. And this announcement is a sign of the shifting times and energy priorities, particularly for California. Experts say the move is not a surprise, but another step toward what each side believes it's in its own best interests.
The response was brief. "I do not need to talk about it. I am good." No call, no meeting, just a digital door closing. Inside Chevron, frustration quickly turned into action. Soon after, Wirth contacted leadership in Texas to begin a new conversation. The reaction there was immediate and very public. Within hours, a Texas state leader posted online, "Welcome home, Chevron. Texas is your true home. Drill, baby, drill." Back in Sacramento, state officials responded with confidence. A short video appeared on an official account teasing Chevron's exit with a melting face emoji and criticism of oil pricing. The clip was deleted soon after backlash and confusion. But by then, the moment had already gone viral. What started as a quiet private exchange quickly grew into a very public clash between California officials and one of the largest energy companies in the country. A partnership that had lasted for generations suddenly began to unravel. Chevron's history in California goes all the way back to 1879, when the company expanded alongside in the state's early oil industry. For decades, its headquarters in San Ramon stood as a major hub, supporting thousands of jobs and helping shape California's energy economy. But by 2024, that long relationship had clearly reached a breaking point. Chevron already had a strong presence in Texas, with about 7,000 employees working in Houston, while roughly 2,000 staff members were still based in California. When CEO Mike Wirth made the decision to move the company's headquarters, it signaled the end of a partnership that had lasted nearly 145 years. On August 2, 2024, the company officially confirmed it would relocate its main headquarters to Houston. The reasoning was straightforward. Operating in California had become increasingly expensive and unpredictable, and recruiting new talent willing to relocate there was becoming more difficult. Chevron eventually sold its longtime San Ramon campus, a San Suimanishi 92-acre property that had served as the company's home base for decades. Seniors. Leadership began shifting to Texas soon after, while the full transition was expected to take several years. For many communities around San Ramon, the move meant more than just corporate offices leaving. The region had long benefited from jobs, local investment, and charitable contributions tied to the company. As Chevron prepared to remove its name from the headquarters building, it marked the end of a major chapter in California's industrial history. Around the same time, drivers across California were already struggling with record fuel prices. In October 2022, gasoline surged to about $6.43 per gallon, the highest level ever recorded in the state. Within just 10 days, prices jumped another 86 cents, putting serious pressure on commuters, delivery drivers, and small businesses trying to keep up with rising costs. Energy reports showed California's fuel prices drifting far above the national average, signaling deeper issues inside the state's fuel market. During that surge, refinery margins didn't just increase, they skyrocketed. In a single month, the average refining margin jumped from about 64 cents to roughly $2.18 per gallon, briefly peaking around $2.44. For energy companies, the numbers looked extremely strong, but for everyday drivers, it meant shrinking budgets and harder choices about travel and transportation. What made the situation even more puzzling was that crude oil prices were actually declining at the time. Analysts struggled to explain the sudden spike. Usual reasons like global supply disruptions or refinery maintenance didn't fully match the data. Instead, attention shifted toward California's own fuel system. The state requires a specialized gasoline blend and operates with limited refining capacity, leaving very little room for supply shocks. When costs begin to rise in such a tight system, pump prices can climb quickly. Weekly reports from the California Energy Commission showed the gap between California and national fuel prices growing wider. As the numbers were studied more closely, a UC Berkeley energy economist discovered an unusual pattern. Since 2015, drivers in the state appeared to be paying roughly 41 to 43 cents more per gallon than standard factors like taxes, regulations, or fuel requirements could clearly explain. When energy economist Severin Bornstein added up the numbers, the result was shocking, roughly $59 billion over 10 years. According to his analysis, that money appeared to come from extra costs drivers were paying at the pump without a clear explanation. The study removed every major factor normally tied to fuel prices, including crude oil costs, transportation, distribution, and even the added expense of California's cleaner gasoline standards. But even after stripping out all those costs, the extra charge was still there. The pattern raised difficult questions about how gasoline prices were moving through California's fuel system. Some analysts began wondering whether the difference could be tied to market structure, supply logistics, or complex pricing layers between refineries, wholesalers, and gas stations. In October 2025, the California Energy Commission released a report after reviewing industry data. Regulators confirmed that the unexplained price gap appeared to exist, but the review found no evidence of illegal coordination among companies. The extra cost didn't show up in tax records or regulatory fees, leaving officials still searching for answers as the debate continued into 2026. At the same time, major energy companies were reporting extremely strong financial results during the earlier price surge. In 2022, ExxonMobil announced quarterly earnings of about $19.7 billion, while Chevron reported roughly $11.2 billion. Other companies in the sector also saw dramatic increases. Valero reported profits rising nearly 500% to around $2.82 billion, while PBF Energy's earnings jumped to about $1.06 billion. These numbers drew widespread attention, especially as many California drivers were paying more than $6 per gallon during that same period. News coverage at the time focused heavily on the contrast between rising gasoline prices and strong earnings reported by major energy companies. Radio shows and public discussions filled with drivers sharing how higher fuel costs were affecting daily commutes, small businesses, and household budgets across the state. On November 29, 2022, several large refining companies, including Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Valero, did not attend a scheduled state hearing that was organized to discuss the sudden spike in fuel prices. Their absence quickly became a major headline and fueled even more public debate. Shortly afterward, California state leadership called a special legislative session and introduced new proposals aimed at increasing oversight of the fuel market. On March 28, 2023, lawmakers approved SB X 1-2, a law that allows the state to set limits on refining profit margins, and created a new petroleum market oversight division with the authority to investigate industry pricing practices. State officials described the law as a response to public concerns about gasoline costs, arguing that stronger oversight was necessary to protect consumers, but the tension between regulators and energy companies did not stop at fuel pricing. On September 16, 2023, California filed a major legal case involving several global energy companies, including Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, and ConocoPhillips. According to the complaint, the companies had not fully communicated certain long-term climate-related risks tied to fossil fuels. Officials said the case could involve significant financial claims and discussed the idea of creating a public fund to help support recovery efforts related to climate-driven disasters such as fires, floods, and drought conditions. As new oversight agencies began operating and legal battles moved forward, the relationship between California regulators and major energy companies grew noticeably more strained. What had once been a long-standing partnership between the state and large oil firms was now turning into an ongoing conflict over regulations, costs, and the future of the energy market. During investor remarks in late 2024, Chevron CEO Mike Wirth openly criticized California's regulatory environment, arguing that strict policies were making it increasingly difficult for companies to operate in the state. Around the same period, Chevron reported a multi-billion-dollar accounting adjustment tied to its California assets, signaling that the company expected a smaller long-term role there. Company leadership suggested that operating conditions had become increasingly complex and expensive. For decades, Chevron had invested heavily in infrastructure across California, but company filings indicated those assets were now viewed as less valuable due to regulatory uncertainty. For investors, the signal was clear. Chevron was preparing to scale back its presence in the state. Other energy companies soon announced similar plans. In October 2024, Phillips 66 revealed that its Los Angeles refinery would close by the end of 2025. The facility processed about 139,000 barrels of oil per day, representing roughly 8% of California's refining capacity. Valero later confirmed that its Benicia refinery is scheduled to close in April 2026, removing another 145,000 barrels per day from the system. Together, these shutdowns represent nearly one-fifth of California's refining capacity, increasing the state's growing reliance on imported fuel supplies. California's fuel system has very little backup supply. More than 90% of the state's specialized gasoline has traditionally been produced inside California, while pipeline connections to other regions remain limited. As refinery capacity has declined in recent years, more fuel shipments have started arriving by tanker from overseas, a process that can take several weeks to reach the West Coast. By May 2025, imports had climbed to roughly 210,000 barrels per day. A memo released by the California Energy Commission in October 2025 raised growing concerns about the situation. Regulators acknowledged that some policies designed to control gasoline prices might also be contributing to refinery closures faster than expected. The report suggested that certain rules might need to be paused for several years in order to stabilize the state's fuel supply. Several academic forecasts also warned that shrinking refinery capacity could eventually push gasoline prices significantly higher. Analysts estimated that additional refinery closures could lead to major price increases in the coming years. State energy data shows that when California's fuel inventory drops below roughly 13.5 days of supply, prices tend to rise quickly, highlighting how little flexibility the system currently has. In response, state leadership introduced several policy adjustments during 2025, including extending the cap-and-trade program and approving additional drilling permits in Kern County. The decision drew criticism from some consumer advocacy groups who argued that earlier price control measures had been softened. Now, in early 2026, the debate is far from settled. With multiple refinery closures already scheduled or underway, California's fuel system faces increasing uncertainty. For millions of drivers, the outcome of these energy policy decisions could directly shape future fuel prices, commuting costs, and the broader economic outlook.